Alright, I already recorded a video today, but I don't know, I'm just like kind of in the mood to record another one. So I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna talk about how I, air quotes, manifested to stop smoking weed. Now, this is not a how-to video, this is not a advice video, and it might actually be quite disappointing to anyone who's searching this up, looking for ways to quit. So I'll start by giving a little history. I smoked for 10 years. I have experimented between the ages of 18 to 25. I experimented with a handful of different substances at parties, to party, not just like sitting at home. And I had a few run-ins with drinking to cope with massive life changes and traumas and things like that. And I quit drinking the same way I quit smoking weed, pretty much overnight, just because I felt like it had no place in my life at all. And I felt like it was starting to lose all its charm, basically. And it was getting to the point where it was pretty much not enjoyable at all for me. And yeah, I just basically stopped overnight. I'm not sober. I drink maybe a glass of wine once every couple years or something like that. But purely a celebratory thing. And I just don't like the way it makes me feel. It makes me nauseous. It makes me like my stomach, and I don't like any of it. I just don't enjoy it. It just doesn't bring me any joy at all. I never was the kind that was like, oh, I love drinking. I love getting fucked up. It was just really a coping mechanism because I just didn't know any better. I didn't know any better, and I'm sure if I had known better, I probably wouldn't have even touched it in the first place. But that was just what I saw in my life, and that is what I reached to. I tried cigarettes many times in my youth. I think the first time I tried was when I was 16. I'd buy a pack here and there. It would last me about a year to smoke the whole pack. I remember going to a doctor's office visit, and they ask you, do you smoke cigarettes? And I'm just painfully honest. So I said yes. And they said, okay, well, how many a day? And I said, I probably smoke about like one a month or something. And then she was like, a carton a month? And I was like, no, like a single cigarette a month. Probably takes me a year to get through the entire pack. She was so confused. She was like, oh. She was like, why are you even telling me this? Because it just made me nauseous. I didn't feel anything. I don't know what people feel when they smoke cigarettes, but I never felt that. Just mainly felt sick from it. And the only time I ever smoked it was if I was like out at a party, or if I just kind of needed a distraction. It was more like a fidget. I would have done better with a fidget spinner, to be honest. It was more just like a distraction, like a fidget toy. So all of this is just a preface to say that I've tried plenty of things and not had really any trouble stopping them. And somehow 10 years went by of me smoking. And honestly, it felt like I just like blinked and it had been 10 years. I really don't know how that happened. And the irony is when I was 18 or so, before I tried smoking, I didn't start smoking till I was about like 21. So I started in my early 20s. And I remember being like, I'm never smoking weed. I thought it was so lame. I thought all my friends that did it were so lame. And I was very judgmental of it. And then I quit drinking, and I just basically shifted to smoking. So now we get to my relationship with smoking, and this is the part that I feel like might disappoint people. I've never viewed smoking as a detriment to my life. I have never viewed weed as a detriment to my life. I have always viewed it as medicine. I've always used it as an aid to help me, as a medicine that I used for my lack of appetite, for my anxiety, for my depression, and various things that in hindsight were kind of just aspects of my neurodivergency, but not necessarily clinically depressed or clinically anxious. They were just aspects of what I was going through and things like that. And also a lot of the people I was surrounding myself with, because I had no self-awareness about the places and the positions I was putting myself in. So this was just a way for me to calm myself. I guess much like people smoke cigarettes to calm themselves. I guess that's what it was for me. I never necessarily enjoyed getting high. I hated feeling heavy and out of control. That's one of the things that I disliked about alcohol as well, is like the lack of control. And that's not meaning that I never got high, because again, once you start smoking, you don't have as much awareness, which is what I was smoking for, right? It did its purpose. Because for me, my neurodivergency makes me extremely sensitive to sensory output. Like so extremely that I can hear everything, see everything all at once. I take notice of every small detail. I can hear conversations around the room without trying. I notice everyone that walks in through the door. I notice every little shift. If an object moves slightly, I notice that. I notice everything. And that can be a lot. That can be a lot when you're already dealing with so much in your head. And then in addition to that, you're also, working retail and going, you're doing these normal things. You're going out and you're partying and whatever, because that's what you're meant to do in your 20s and all this bullshit. And I mean, to be honest, for me, it was always about the music. Like, going out was not necessarily about going out. I am just like a music head. So for me, hearing music live, I was willing to put up with the fact that I was like in crowds and it was very annoying to be smushed between people. I was willing to put up with that because the joy, the full body joy and ecstasy that I received from hearing music live, it kind of just undid all that other bullshit, right? So I'm going to look at a little alleyway so I can have some privacy and talk over here. And I smoked for 10 years. I quit the act of smoking over a year ago, last February. Overnight, I switched to edibles, tinctures, which is just drops. Essentially, it's just CBD and THC mix in drops or capsules. So it's easier to dose that way. It's easier to kind of control the amount. And the reason I did that was because I had lost my apartment and I was forced to move in with my mother, and she's super anti everything. She won't even touch coffee. She's like neurotic. And I don't know, there's a lot of irony in that because it's like, that's not what's making you crazy, man. It's you're the one that's making you crazy. Whatever. And so I was like, all right, well, it's going to be easier. And also, the other thing was, I started feeling a weird sensation in my chest. It felt like bubbling. It felt like something was wrong. It felt like my lungs were something was about to happen, right? And I was like, ooh, I better stop. So I stopped overnight, switched to these drops and stuff. And I was quite fine doing that. I did it morning and night. I took about 5 to 10 milligrams a day. Sometimes more if I was like really, really overloaded with sensory issues. And I mostly did it in the morning because I would need it at work. Because one of my issues at work is that I cannot, this is my past issue. I don't subscribe to this anymore, but I could not control the pace at which I worked at. I would work so fast, 2 times, 3 times faster than any of my coworkers. and I would completely burn myself out unreasonably. I would be dripping sweat, and I would lose weight, and I would skip my breaks, and I would just work. Meanwhile, other people are on their phones and talking and hanging out, and I would never do any of that shit. I would just work. For no reason. Like, nobody was making me do it. I wasn't being held at gunpoint. I just could not control my speed. And my thoughts used to be like that too. My thoughts used to be at the speed of lightning, just just every thought. Nowadays my head is super clear. I can just literally sit there and not think about a single thing. But at the time, I couldn't. And so it really helped me at work. Now, this was before I knew about my neurodivergency and before I knew how and realized in retrospect how all the different things I tried in my 20s always affected me really, really differently from my peers, to the point where a lot of the times I would have the complete opposite effect, and not in a bad way, but let's say, I'm not going to name the thing, but there's this substance that you take when you go to a rave. It makes you very talkative if you're neurotypical. It makes you very talkative. It makes you very touchy, feely. It makes you want to interact with people and strangers. It would have the complete opposite effect with me. I would feel good. It'd be amazing. I'd feel amazing. But I would want to be alone. I don't want to be touched. I don't want to talk. In fact, I found it incredibly hard to talk. And all I wanted to do was ignore everyone and listen to the music that I was there to listen to. And I found it quite annoying when people would come up to me and say, "Oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay?" Because like they perceive that I'm having a bad time. And this wasn't the only substance that had this effect on me. There's so many other things I tried that had like opposing effects from what they were supposed to do, right? But meanwhile, my peers are experiencing it the way they're supposed to. And I wouldn't say THC had an opposing effect on me, but I will say that it had the exact effect that I needed, because people always say, well, weed makes you lazy. And it's like, well, if my issue is that I can't slow down and I constantly need to be moving and I don't know how to stop myself, then taking something that helps me slow down is appropriate, because then I just feel normal. And again, I'm not doing it to feel high. I'm doing it to feel normal, to feel relaxed, so I can go about my business in a normal fashion, so I'm not moving 1,000 miles per hour. A great book that I'm going to recommend here is Seeing Through the Smoke, I believe. I don't know the doctor's name. It's a huge book. It's going to be written by a doctor. I'm so sorry, I can't look it up right now because I'm recording on my phone. I actually found it at the library when I was searching for books about autism. And it's one of the very few books that came up. And basically this doctor, he's dedicated his entire life to researching not just the effects of weed, but the history of weed, the history of marijuana, why it was so demonized and illegalized, and why it has all this stigma, when really it's just a medicine, and it was used as a medicine, and how it went from being viewed as a medicine to a drug and being, all this stuff. It's an amazing book. His father as well dedicated his entire life to this research, so it's very, very well researched, and there's little sections for all kinds of different ailments and how it helps that specific ailment. And I find it very, very interesting. Highly recommended. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I like to be exact, and I cannot repeat the research exactly or any of that, and I don't want to butcher it. So if you're interested in that stuff and you're watching this and you view marijuana as a medicine and not as some kind of scapegoat, because here's where I'm going to get real with y'all. A lot of people blame the substance and not themselves. Because let me tell you, I stopped smoking once before. It was a very, very busy time in my life, and I literally just didn't have time to smoke. I was so busy, and I was so just on the move all the time that I didn't even think about it. So I just stopped. I lasted for about a few months before my life stopped being fun, everything turned bad. I allowed that to affect me, and I went back to smoking. And this is why you need to work on yourself and realize that you are the root cause, because then you'll always end up going back to it at some point. It might be in a few years, it might be in a few weeks, but you're always going to end up going back to it. And now I'm proud to say that literally nothing in my life changed besides me mentally, all the mental work. And this is where manifestation comes in, because to me, manifestation isn't doing affirmations and blah, 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 and the secret and all this stuff. Manifestation is just becoming unshakable and turning to a state of knowing instead of just belief and maybe. It's essentially just getting out of your own way and allowing things to come into your life while you're still, doing the actions and whatever. But it's just like this knowing, this deep self-confidence that no matter what is being thrown at you, you're getting what you want, right? And because of this, something switched in me, and I just stopped taking the drops. Now, of course, I had income issues, and I wasn't really about to afford it. But listen, I've had income issues before, and I would scrape together every single penny that I could find just so I could go get a joint, so I could feel normal, right? But because my head is so clear, and I feel so normal, and I feel so confident, and it just seemed unnecessary. So pretty much overnight, I just stopped. I had no withdrawal symptoms. Didn't feel any different. The only withdrawal symptoms I used to get when I would maybe not smoke for a day or two, when I was smoking, would be my stomach would get kind of messed up. I wouldn't have an appetite. That didn't even happen. I didn't lose my appetite. I was so happy. That was actually the thing that made me the happiest, is that I didn't lose my appetite. And ever since then, I feel exactly like I do when I would take the tinctures. Now, of course, I've been not working, so I haven't had so much sensory input. So yeah, it's a lot easier right now because I don't have all this sensory input. And I'm quite curious to see how I face the sensory input once I get back to it. But I have a really strong feeling that it's not going to bother me because I just have so much space in my brain. It's so quiet, So I really feel like it's going to be not a thing, right? It's just going to be not a thing. And yeah, that's basically how I quit. It just came out of nowhere. I did not plan for it. I did not think about it. Again, I think it's very crucial that I never blamed marijuana for anything in my life. I never looked at it as a detriment. I always looked at it as a medicine. I always looked at it as something that's helping me, just like someone would take an antidepressant and look at it as something that helps them. That is what I viewed marijuana as. And I always knew that if the time ever came where I no longer needed it, then I would just stop. And people always say, I can stop anytime I want, ha ha ha. People always say that, and it doesn't happen that way. Well, the reason it doesn't happen that way because you have to change things. And when people think of changing things, they always think of physical change. They think of changing what's around you and changing your circumstances and all this stuff. But it's not about that. It's about changing yourself mentally, becoming unshakable, not taking anything personally to your detriment. Even if it looks bad, being able to see the good. There's so much that goes into it. And again, I'm not here to give advice or to lecture anyone. And if you care at all about how I've reached this point or whatever. I have plenty of videos talking about it, and I will continue to be making videos. And the reason I'm making these videos in the first place is because I'm so confident in my knowing, and I am so sure of what I'm accomplishing and where I'm going to be and who I'm going to be. It's essentially just a video diary so that nobody has any questions about how I did it. All of it will be here when the time comes when people bring their questions. All of it will be here. So yeah, develop a strong sense of self. If I had to give some steps or some advice, I guess it would be develop a strong sense of self, stop looking for a scapegoat, develop a positive relationship. And I mean, listen, some people smoke so much, it takes up their entire life, it's all they do. I never had that issue, okay? I never was like smoking multiple joints a day. I'd say maybe half a joint a day. I'm quite a lightweight. And even if I had been smoking for 10 years, I was still a lightweight. My tolerance never went up so high that I could smoke from a bong or whatever. That shit would make me nauseous. I've never did dabs. I never like moved up with my consumption. I always, like I said, I was never looking to get fucked up or high out of my mind. It was really just like trying to keep a base level of moving at a regular pace, right? But now again, I feel like I did exactly like I did when I was taking the tinctures, because I've worked on my mental. I essentially can just feel that relaxed state. I can go sit in the sun for 20 minutes and feel the exact same way as if I had just taken the tincture. And I also stopped because I noticed, I was like, oh my God, I'm so relaxed that now that I'm taking the THC on top of it, it's like just putting me to sleep, and I'm like not even functional anymore because it just puts me to sleep. So it's completely unnecessary. It's unnecessary for my bank account. It's also just another thing that I have to go do, and I just try to simplify my life as much as possible, and always having to worry about if I have enough money for it and if I have enough at home, and having to go to the store and show my ID and, oh, you guys are out of stock, then I have to figure out what to do and get something else that's not as good, and it's just like such a pain in the ass. And just like with drinking, I'm not sober. I'm not gonna never smoke again. I look forward to the day I can sit with a friend and smoke a bit and reminisce and celebrate something, I look forward to that. But it is never going to be an everyday thing ever again. There's just no reason for it. There's just no reason for it. I've completely moved away from that past me that needed any reason to participate in it. And yeah, that's my story. That's how I manifested quitting smoking weed. I essentially just worked so hard on my self-belief and my self-confidence and just my knowing. And you can either think about it as like a psychological thing or a spiritual thing. Just depends what you believe in. But that's that.